Hi, friend. If you are new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Kayla Tyshen, and I help parents have more confidence in their parenting, more connection with their kids, and more joy in their home. I also talk about my parenting journey with fatigue and illness as a type 1 diabetic. So, subscribe so you don't miss these videos. And if you're a parent looking for support, check out the other videos on my channel for evidence-based support for raising kids in a way that's respectful, that's introspective, and that ultimately leads to deeper relationships with your children. So the upstairs brain is under construction until our child is in their mid-20s. So even the parts that can function in their upstairs brain can become inaccessible during moments of high emotion and stress. So what does this mean? It's obviously super unrealistic to expect our child to be rational and logical, to be able to regulate their emotions, to be able to make good decisions, to think before they act, and to be empathetic. We can just expect. That is most of the time not going to happen. These are all things that the upstairs brain helps them to do. And so they can demonstrate some of these qualities sometimes. But for the most part, they just don't have the skills and the biological ability to do it all the time. So I think it's helpful to know this, right? It's helpful to just have an understanding of this so that in those moments we can be like, okay, like this is normal. They're acting like a child. They are like doing something that's completely age appropriate. Because I think sometimes we're like, what is wrong with my kid? You know, what is happening? Just know, normal child behavior. We know what happens when we are experiencing stress and fear, right? We know what happens. So when we are using tactics of yelling and anger and threatening and punishment, what do you think is happening to your child's brain? So what does that mean when we're yelling? What do you think is happening to their learning, logical thinking centers of their brain? Can they stop? I don't know. What happens to us when we're in a fight with our husbands or wives? Do we actually hear anything that they're saying? If we're heated, can I actually hear anything that he says until we take a minute and then like come back and are able to like hear each other and talk? Imagining that for our children is really helpful. So we can see that like in the moment, they cannot make any type of logical choice when there's fear, stress, or anger. We're going to talk about co-regulation, which your child might be experiencing some of that in that moment where you're getting on his level, you're connecting with him, he's able to calm down, you're helping that threat system come offline. We've trained our child to not respond to us unless they're in a state of fear. So what I want to do now is talk about the long-term consequences to our child of living in states of fear. Okay, I'll just go through these really quick. So, chronic stress from negative interactions, from that fight or flight system being on, from the cortisol, from the adrenaline, can lead to hyperarousal, where the child's nervous system is constantly on edge, or hypoarousal, where the child becomes numb and detached. And actually, the hypoarousal is more damaging and dangerous to our child's body. Both of these, living in hypoarousal or hyperarousal, can manifest in not not only different kinds of mental health issues, but also physical issues, physical illnesses. So, one, you can have a child who has more aggression, who maybe has anxiety, withdraws, depression, and difficulties in regulating their emotions. They can struggle with forming healthy relationships and managing stress. Okay, now let's think about a child's self perception and inner voice. These are completely influenced by a child's caregivers and by interactions with that caregiver. We're not going to go into attachment today, but that is a huge piece of it. Constant yelling can internalize a negative self-image where a child believes they're bad or unworthy, a critical inner voice that leads to low self-esteem. So a child can really struggle with that self-criticism and that lack of confidence. So if our child is experiencing fear from us, it's going to be really hard for them to experience that connection and that attachment. Or it'll throw them into unhealthy relationship patterns of that aggression and even unhealthy patterns of what love is. Are we helping our children to develop empathy and help them be a thriving human being in the world? We need to realize that the way we do that is modeling for them how to act in relationships. So, do we want our child's tool of getting things, of being in relationships, getting people to do what they want through yelling, through aggression, through using anger in that way? So they're learning those patterns from us. Okay, so what is discipline? Discipline is all about teaching. The word discipline comes from that word disciple. So I think of, Jesus and his disciples. They were with him. They learned from him. He taught them. That is what we're called to do as parents. We are called to be with our children, to model for them, to teach them, to help them, to guide them when they make mistakes, to learn how to interact appropriately in society, right? We all want children that are going to thrive in society, that are going to be respectful citizens that contribute to the world. We want them to learn self-regulation skills, right? We really want them to learn self-regulation skills for our sake, mostly. No, for our sake and for, as they're in society, they need to be able to respond appropriately in different situations. So part of what this involves, or a lot of what this involves, is nurturing a child's intrinsic motivation, which is what discipline does. It taps into who a child is and how they can choose to make decisions, whereas punishment is all about just avoiding negative feedback, right? So it's an extrinsic motivation: punishment, yelling, threats. These are all, I'm not going to do this because my mom's going to get mad, or I'm going to do this but I'm not going to get caught. So it becomes all about avoiding the external negative, response. Whereas intrinsic motivation is, I know that this isn't right, and so I'm going to choose to make a different decision. Techniques for effective teaching, for effective discipline: calm communication, clear communication, and consistent follow through. So we're going to talk more about that in a minute. Don't teach until they can learn. So, right, if their brain's not online, their thinking brain, their learning brain is not online, that's not the time to teach. because they can't learn. After 6, you start to see them integrating, but it's also remembering that it's still not developed until they're in their mid-20s. Discipline is something that we can even do as a baby because it's all about teaching. So we, even for an infant, it's going to obviously look different, but discipline is all about teaching. And if it's calm communication, if it's clear communication, and if it's consistent follow through, that can be done at any age. This is a key part of discipline, but also just when our child, right, is has flipped their lid, they don't have access to their upstairs brain. We know adrenaline and cortisol is running through their system. They're in fight or flight. The most important way to help their system calm down and help them gain some access to the upstairs brain is through co-regulation. That starts with curiosity, empathy, and connection. A lot of times the first step for us to get ourselves out of our downstairs brain is curiosity. What is going on for my child right now? And sometimes it's like, oh my goodness, this is getting crazy. Like, okay, something's happening. Something is going on for them. Okay, this is what I just learned about their brain. Okay, that's gonna play a huge factor. Empathy. Okay, this is really hard for them. They are having a really hard time. When I'm having a hard time, throw a tantrum too. It does look a little bit different, but I do throw tantrums sometimes. And so, okay, like I can get into that place of, man, they're really struggling right now. This is really hard for them. And connection. So, like you said, getting down on their level, physical closeness. Now, every child is different and every situation is different. And so sometimes our child might not want to be touched or held. And that's okay. We respect that and we wait calmly until they are ready. Sometimes they just need to be held. They just need that closeness. They need to know that everything's okay and that we're here. And they need to know this regardless. We're here. We love them no matter what craziness is coming out of them. We're not going anywhere. We're also not threatened by their behavior because it's not a threat to us. They can be throwing themselves on the floor, screaming, and our brain could be telling us, danger, fight, but then we can integrate and realize, like, this is not a threat. They're okay. They're physically okay. They're flailing and throwing themselves on the floor. They're having a really hard time. This does not need to affect me deeply in terms of I don't need to be triggered. I don't have anything to be afraid of. So I can just sit and welcome their emotions because they're trying to communicate something to us. They're trying to communicate that they are really angry that they couldn't have a popsicle right before dinner, whatever it is. But we don't need to be threatened by that. Sometimes we do need a break, a timeout, and sometimes we are too triggered to be able to access our curiosity, our empathy, and we aren't able to be that co-regulation for our child. And so sometimes, yeah, we need to like take a minute and go into the other room, tell our child, I need to go calm my body. I will be back. I love you, and they're safe, and we get to take that minute. I personally don't recommend timeouts. You can imagine this is what it might be saying to our child. You're too much. you need to go isolate and be by yourself. And so, what that can teach is that emotions are not okay and they're not lovable when they're expressing emotions. And so, the other thing is that because children need that co-regulation, um, instead of regulating, emotions can just be shut down instead of going through the process of regulating their emotions. They can actually stay in that, with that like elevated levels of hypo or hyper arousal, and just like live with that instead of completing the cycle of that regulation. So I really love, I don't know if, has anyone heard of Janet Lansbury? She talks a lot about toddlers, and she calls it being an unruffled parent. When we understand brain development and we can expect unreasonable, we can expect that like our child is going to be unreasonable, we can actually be present to welcome all those emotions. And so this co-regulation and that being present, that connection, that empathy, that is all building their staircase to integrate the upstairs and downstairs brain. I think that's an important point, is that we're wanting to build that staircase. We're wanting to help them be able to get up and down, be able to get to the thinking part of their brain in those moments. And so co-regulation is helping to build that staircase. This is understanding your child's behavior, looking at behavior as what we can see above the surface. This is what we can see: hitting, fighting, kicking, screaming, tantrum, meltdown, unreasonable demands, ignoring requests, not listening, not following directions. It takes digging, and I think that digging starts with curiosity to get to the root causes of the behavior. So if we're constantly just addressing the behavior, then it's going to keep sprouting up because the roots are still there. Whereas if we actually address these root causes, then we can potentially eliminate some behaviors, depending on what they are. Who can relate to extra meltdowns when our child has not slept, is hungry? So all of these types of things we see every day, how they affect our children. Thanks so much for watching my video. Leave any questions you have in the comments and I will get back to you. If you are needing support in your parenting and you're interested in working with me, check out my website, www.yourconsciousparentcoach.com. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next video.